What's up, everyone, and welcome. It's Friday, and it is the TDR Tradetoblack podcast. Hope you all had a great week. Got some big news this morning. Germany makes it official. They're going live with adult use. We're going to dive into that as well. We want to set the record straight with some of this current administration, some of the misleading information that they're sharing about changing federal legalization cannabis. So far from the truth. So we're going to bring in cannabis lead lobbyist Don Murphy to break all that down. And if there's some concerns about whether or not safe banking will pass based on some of the misinformation and guidance that they've been providing to the investor community here in the cannabis space. So let's jump right into it. Let's welcome in first person up. We have Mr. Anthony Varell, who's actually down in the Florida Keys right now. Don't know if we're getting much signal with you. We'll work on that. But Guap, we've got you at least. Good to see you. Oh, there he is. Good to see you, gents. Happy Friday. How are things, Guap?
Things are good. We've got some dueling palm trees. Anthony's working on his connection in AV. We are flying by the seat of our pants this morning, and we can hear Anthony struggling as we speak.
It's like,
yeah.
Can you hear me, Shad? Shad, you there?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, I can hear you, buddy. We'll kind of walk this through. Maybe I don't know if this will work or not today, but anyway, listen, let's dive into the first. Anthony, we're going to put you just in the back studio right now because you're getting no service. But Guap, we'll start with you. This is big news. Germany makes it official. Massive news to say the least. Break it down for us when this actually goes live,
right?
And what this does for the overall industry. It's a big moment.
Big question, big moment, massive news. But I'm going to give a more balanced and nuanced take than perhaps you're getting on Twitter with the limited characters. So yeah, Germany's parliament voted just this morning to decriminalize and legalize cannabis in Germany.
Yeah,
medical sales have been going strong for a while. Germany represents half of Europe's medical cannabis market. So 2023 sales were about 430 million US to over 230,000 patients. So let's keep in mind that the medical program is already in place, but this is a big moment for recreational legalization. And I want to dig into it a little bit. This is the fourth largest GDP in the world. I mean, this is big. So they passed it this morning. So on April 1st, this is actually what happens. Cannabis will be decriminalized. Germans will have the right to carry up to 25 grams. That's 3 short of an ounce, and 50 grams at home. That's quite a bit. They'd also be allowed to grow 3 plants. Nonprofit social clubs with up to 500 members are going to start popping up in July. But really where I think investors at home, our audience, the industry, all the companies that have some international exposure, think Curaleaf, Tilray, High Tide, et cetera. They're really what they're eyeballing is what Germany confusingly calls is the second pillar. For the U.S. audience, it's the second stage of this. And that's where things get a little murky. Giving timelines and details about what that looks like once they go from these clubs to full-blown rec sales. That's something that we could speculate on in a different show, but let's celebrate what is actually happening here, which is, decriminalization, legalization, another huge step forward. What Germany does, the entire EU watches. It's going to have a huge ripple effect on the rest of the Europe and the rest of the world. And man, if it just lights just a little bit of fire under the U.S.'s butt to get their ducks in a row, I'm happy with that too.
I think that's we've talked about that. And I think you and Anthony in previous podcasts said, there's really no kind of like domino effect or influence that decision will have in Germany on the U.S. But does it? I don't know. If they look at the opportunity, the economic opportunity within Germany, Tilray obviously is one company that comes to mind that's going to really stem to benefit. Curious to see how this will actually trend leading up to when this goes live in April on how these stocks that are situated, Tilray, Curaleaf, if we start to see these things move based on this going live as we get closer to April. But those are obviously the top 2 companies I can think of. There's probably more that will stem to benefit from this German news.
And I will say, I would urge if I had a voice, I would urge the German officials to tighten up the gap, and I'm sure everyone in the U.S. with any exposure to Germany is say the same thing. Tighten up that gap between the club stage and full-blown rec stage. We have examples in the U.S. about what happens when you let people possess an ounce at home, walk around with an ounce, go to clubs. It could be a moment there for illicit sales to take off. The best way to combat that is to get full-blown rec sales, get access out there. So I want to say something in Germany, which is beginnen Sie bald mit dem legalen Verkauf von Cannabis, sonst werden die illegalen Verkauf zunehmen, which the translation, that was terrible. I'm sure I took
No, that's great, buddy.
Took a year of German in high school, and that roughly means start legal cannabis sales soon or the illegal sales will grow.
That's for sure. Yeah. So it's a big day. I think this is, as we've discussed before, hopefully this is many things to come, not only in Germany, but some of the change that we see here in 2024. I still think there's a lot of momentum that's building within this space right now. And I know a lot of people are patiently waiting for rescheduling to happen. But, truthfully, at the end of the day, I do believe that this is the year that we definitely see change, not only in Germany, and I think this is a great example, but eventually in the U.S. And why do I believe that? Well, let's welcome in segment number 2. This was Into the Wire, basically outlining big headlines in the cannabis space. Germany, big to say the least. Anthony Farrell, I don't think it's going to be a host or beyond today. He's got some pretty bad Wi-Fi down in the Florida Keys right now. Guap, you're holding the fort down along with myself, which is great. But now, without further ado, let's welcome in Cannabis lead lobbyist Don Murphy back to the podcast. Good day, sir. It's been a couple of weeks, but how are things?
Things are great, actually. Congratulations to Germany. And
yeah, isn't that great?
I do think one of the things that news suggests is that any issues related to treaty violations no longer hold up. So that is, when you talk about domino, Germany kind of is the Colorado of Europe now. And I think to that point, things will start to move in the right direction. So that's
a great way of looking at it. It is definitely the Colorado of Europe, to say the least.
They all fight for tourist dollars, right?
For sure.
When people in America are deciding where they're going to vacation or tour in Europe, Germany's going to be number 1 or number 2 if it wasn't already. But if you're France and England and in Italy, you're saying to yourselves, hey, we got to compete. And so I think those countries will move sooner rather than later because of what Germany did.
Getting a lot of highs here. Jungle Java, the Don, Tara Norman. Hi, Don. Don's the goat. The Don. You've got quite the following here, my friend. This is great.
Big Papa Murphy is welcome on the show anytime.
Exactly.
It's been an interesting year since I came on Twitter, and you all remember how that started. So I'm doing a lot better today than I was doing 12 months ago.
Yeah, you could see guys working on the 65th floor building a skyscraper building on a construction site. And if they see the dawn coming on, they stop everything, walk across that beam, and they sit and watch and listen if they're a cannabis investor. But saying that, we wanted to have you on today. Let's set the record straight. The lot of misinformation with Vice President Kamala Harris, that video that came out basically saying that we've changed federal legalization with cannabis, which many people following the space believes is so inaccurate, which is the truth. I don't have to get you started because I know this is pretty frustrating for you to hear something like this, but is there any kind of concern when they're misleading information like this that we may not see safe banking pass?
As far as safe banking goes, this Harris comment has nothing to do with that. Right? One is executive branch, one is legislative branch. I just got off the phone with someone I trust very much, high-level staff, who said, to quote, things remain very good.
Okay, good.
So nothing has changed because of that or in spite of that. And I feel pretty comfortable sharing that news with you. So from the highest levels in Congress, things remain very good.
That's good. So what was I know I don't want to get you started, but I am going to get you started. What was your reaction when you saw this video?
My reaction was, what the F? Did I sleep through something? I had to actually make some calls. It was honestly, it was like looking at a Sabatino meme, right? You see the meme and you go, is this real? It's plausible, but really the difference between a Saab meme and a tweet from Harris is one is believable and one is not.
Yes.
I mean, she just has such a long track record of saying things that are inaccurate, being disingenuous, outright lying. Her comment on the Breakfast Club about getting high to Snoop Dogg and Tupac. Like, seriously, they didn't really exist at the time. So if anybody wants to know what's going to happen in the cannabis sector, smoke whatever she was smoking because she was looking into the future, and then you can come back and tell us all what happened. But
I think if anything, it's just another example as to how disengaged they are with the everyday people. Like, we are now in a time where any information or any word that you say, people are going to go on their phones and do the proper research within a matter of 30 seconds. We, on average, as consumers, are consuming content, especially stuff that we like, on average between 8 and 10 hours a day. So I understand a comment or a bold statement like this might work back in the early to mid 80s when you were controlled only by newspaper, television, and radio. But I'm shocked to think that she actually, with a very low approval rate, would say something like this, not understand the domino effect that people are going to see through this because they have the information in front of them. That's what surprised me the most, because you can't fool the general public anymore.
Well, but you're correct. You can't fool some of us. You can't fool us because we're dialed into this. But the general public is not dialed into this. They are not Googling, hey, what happened?
Yeah.
They just see that quote. They take it as gospel. And that's why it's disingenuous, because she is playing off of her base's trust in her. And it's unfortunate. Look, the cannabis issue is not a political issue of any real level, right? We care about it, and a handful of us care about it, but it's not even in the top 10 discussion points in the Senate race in California. How could that be, right?
Yeah.
In basically a Democrat primary, they are not talking about cannabis. So, the funny thing is what that quote and that map, I think you guys have the map that they put out, shows they're just totally disengaged. They're incompetent. They are not focused on cannabis at all. And maybe what the Biden administration has done is turn this all over to HHS and the DEA and wipe their hands of it. Now, I still believe that cannabis is going to be scheduled 3 before the end of, well, I don't want to give a date, but certainly before the election.
I was leaning in closely there. I was like, what's the date?
and I think this all suggests that they're not going to take cannabis to the electorate, right? And that's why I said a month or so ago that I didn't think the campaign thought it was worthy of running up the flagpole, which is why the DEA would come out with its recommendation on a Friday after Congress went on recess, just to bury
it. I know there's a lot of us that follow this space, and there's a lot of people that don't. But I would push back on that a little bit, because I do think, that's a strategy in play then. They're obviously trying to target the people that don't follow the cannabis space. And with a bold statement like that, you're obviously trying to get as many voters as possible, which is the political landscape of 2024. It doesn't get any worse than that. But, truthfully, I look at this and I just hope in due time that people do enough proper research that realize that this is something that has to change. But I guess if it goes more and more mainstream, that's what we can only hope for. And we continue to have these conversations, right?
Hey, answer me this. Who has pushed back? Kyle Turley and Jim McMahon of the Cannabis Freedom Party put out a press release calling, her a liar. And what did they say? It was just a blatant falsehood.
Yeah.
That was the strongest comment I've seen. I give credit to Weldon Angelos for his comments about the Biden pardon statement. But where's NORML? Where's MPP? Where's DPA? Where's NCR? Where's USCC? None of these lefty advocacy organizations or the industry organizations are going to dare take a stick to these statements by the administration. And the left, what are they going to do? They're going to vote for Trump? No. So, that's why I think they made a calculation that they can take a half step. They can do Schedule 3. They can say what they say, and they can get away with it. Quite honestly, other than your show and a few others, they did.
The truth sometimes hurts, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Well, as they say, a lie goes around the world before the truth gets its pants on.
Yeah. Guap, you wanted to ask something? Go ahead.
yeah. I mean, I think Hanlon's razor is don't attribute to malice what can be attributed to incompetence. I think that's what happened there with the map a little bit. We covered it on a previous show where we had the map on the screen and the key was flipped. So Florida, for instance, according to the map, had recreational cannabis sales, which was news to me. So that screamed a little bit of incompetence more than sort of an intentional, we're going to score some political points here. But, I'm just happy that this is the Schedule 3 decision that we hope to see is something that's not Kamala's decision, right? So, there's still some catalysts ahead that no presidential election is going to alter.
Yeah.
Which is worse, incompetence or indifference? I mean,
Right.
to me, Joe Biden owes the black voters of South Carolina more than they've gotten. I mean, they got to be kicking themselves, right? He was dead man walking out of Iowa and New Hampshire. He comes down to North Carolina and they saved his ass and made him president.
Yeah.
And what do they have to show for it? And so the lefty organizations are just mum. They don't want the orange man, and they think Biden is like deserving. I mean, Normal gave him Harris an A rating. They got to be taking gas over this.
Yeah.
These comments and this lack of
Yeah.
action. Where's the Cole Memo 2.0?
Yeah. Good
Sorry.
point. That's a very good point. This is the TDR Tradetoblack podcast. I'm your host, Tradales. I'm with Guap and our special guest here today, cannabis lead lobbyist Don Murphy. As usual, don't forget to like this video, share this video with your network, click on that bell for all notifications to keep you updated on the biggest guests that we have in our next podcast. And as well, we really appreciate if you could hit that subscribe button. We want to grow this community to get these messages out more and more and more so we can expose some of this administration and how they're very misleading. But I'm going to take a question. Jungle Java writes, do you think we hear from the DEA first or get safer banking first if you had to guess? Put you on the spot, Don.
Whoa.
I can't get, well, first of all, I think I would say DEA first, but
Okay.
I'd rather have safe banking first.
Why is that?
Because once the DEA moves marijuana from a 1 to a 3, assuming that happens, and I'm still,
Right.
99% sure that's going to be the case. And I don't have any intel from anyone who thinks the opposite. So if DEA comes down with their ruling first, then the wind is out of the sails of safe. It just is. I'm not in the industry, so I can't say definitively, oh, we still need safe. I think that's the case. But the narrative is that moving to Schedule 3 fixes 280E and many of the other things that are, necessary to the industry. And safe banking is a little less necessary or perceived to be less necessary than it was the day before.
So if safe were to get voted on first before the DEA and rescheduling, what are the benefits then if you look at that route versus the one you just outlined?
I don't think the DEA is going to look at, what the legislature did, the Congress did in passing safe and say, oh, now we got to move it to 3.
Of course.
One doesn't really affect the other. I will say that the DEA is more likely to come down first. Remember, in order to become law, this thing has to go to the floor, over to the House, pass the House, and be the exact language necessary. They've got to vote that same Senate bill, or if they amend it, it's got to come back. Yeah. Now, to what Natalie posted in Politico and based on my conversations with Luke DeMeyer, they are negotiating in good faith. It's a few words difference. And so my expectation is it would leave the Senate, go to the House, pass and be done, and then go to the president's desk. It would not be amended and then have to come back. Yeah. That's what's taken so long, by the way, right? They want to get exactly what the House will pass and then save that return trip back.
You do feel confidently, though, that we do see some sort of movement, whether it's safe or rescheduling here in 2024 still. Very confident with that?
Yes. If I was in this sector and I don't have any equity, but if I was, I'd still be, I'm very bullish on it. Not that I'm giving advice on, like if you're in, stay in.
Yeah, I hear you.
I mean, why would you get out now? Why?
Yeah.
Well,
I think that's a big takeaway. If you just said you feel very bullish. We got some people here saying it looks like, hopefully we get something around 420. What a marketing ploy that would be. But I think we're reading a little bit too much into that for us that follow the space a little closely. But that'd be nice. It was a nice sunny spring afternoon, and all of a sudden we get an announcement like that. Would not?
Yeah, that might be the opportunity for the administration to dog whistle some federal reform to its base without the whole rest of the general population knowing or caring. If and when this happens, Schedule 3, I don't think it makes the A block in the national news. I can tell you that.
Yeah. I know we kind of hinted in a couple of podcasts before, with Germany making this announcement. I know it's not going to have any impact on what the U.S. does, but does it in any way, any sort of way?
Well, to the point I made earlier, I think it takes that whole treaty question off the table.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because I've heard that for years. Oh, we can't do it because we have a treaty.
Right. Yeah, that is huge. And I know it seems like it's only this podcast putting the pressure on, but it made me feel really good to see, the Mike Tysons of the world, veterans groups, law enforcement groups, putting together they all seem like strongly worded letters, and what good does that do? But anytime that gets in the news, it puts pressure on, it calls them out. If you put 5 campaign promises out there to get elected and you're still 0 for 5, even though you seem to have a lot of gears in motion, and we get more than 0 for 5 come election time, any pressure we can put on, the better.
Yeah,
that's what made Sabatino's memes so plausible, right?
Right.
He was quoting all that, and Tyson. Look, there are, and this sort of aggravates me. It has over the years. The star power that could come to Capitol Hill and be brought to bear, and not for nothing, but these NFL players, these NBA players who now have brands, and that's why I point out what McMahon and Turley did was they stepped up and took a swipe at Harris, who quite honestly is quickly, if not already, becoming the Democrats' version of George Santos. She's just not believable, and the only people that paid any attention to what she said was us.
Yeah.
Right? They just totally dismissed her.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that the White House part, the president's inner circle, even pays her any attention.
Yeah, you're right.
It's like Weekend at Bernie's for 4 years because they got to keep him going because they don't want her to be president and they don't want her to be the nominee because they know she'll just get smoked.
Here's a good question from Dan Kinney. Question for Don. What does he think happens to rescheduling if Biden pulls out of the race or is declared unfit?
Woo.
It probably is even more necessary, right, to go if it's political, right? I think everything's political. So that's, I think that still happens. I think it has to happen. And let's be honest, anybody who steps in on the Democrat side has got to be more pro-cannabis reform than the incumbent, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody waiting in line, whether it's Newsom or Pritzker or Dean Phillips or, sorry, I should have said him first. Sorry, Dean. Waiting in the wings would be much better. In fact, they might even say, whoa, hold on 3. We're just going straight to deschedule.
Yeah.
Think of how easy it would be to come out on the record, steal massive political capital by stealing this issue. It's bonkers to me that it hasn't happened yet.
Well, let me flip to the other side of the aisle. I think Trump's going to be the nominee, right? I think we all agree on that. Geez, I think I was on your show 9 months ago when I said that. And Florida is going to be on the ballot. Imagine Trump getting to vote on legalization in Florida.
Yeah.
And if he does, and he comes out and he says it, or somebody says, "Hey, how you voting on marijuana on Measure 4 or 420 or whatever the measure number is?" And he says, "Absolutely, I'm voting for it. The people shouldn't get arrested." Blah blah blah. He's just going to leap right over where Biden is at Schedule 3.
That's a good point. Tim P writes, "Shad, you're just figuring out politicians lie." What? They lie? I love some of these people and their feedback.
I mean, it's not like Kamala edited the video, guys, but
she said the words.
Yeah.
She said the words. It was not.
Yeah.
And she knows better. She
Yeah.
knows better. And that's the thing that's so aggravating.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's very aggravating. You can see how she's just lying through her teeth and smiling doing it, right?
Yeah.
Listen, appreciate the time. Hey, if you ever want to come on weekly, we're more than welcome to have you on because you are the GOAT based on the response here today.
I know. Look, and I appreciate it. But the truth is, I just don't have anything to say every week. And
No, I hear you.
I just have to make shit up. I mean, you don't want
Yes.
that. You just have some elected official on.
Hey, our good friend, I think it was Anthony Cogniglio from New Lake. He got a chance to see you down in Washington, if I'm correct. Yes?
Yes, he did. Yes,
Yes.
he did. That was great. And,
yeah, he had some great things to say just watching you in action. But yeah, we got to have you guys on at the same time to kind of walk through like what you do on a day-to-day basis. But it's great for you to tell us. But when we have actually a third party, and this is something we desperately want to get on location film so we can bring to life on what you do every day. And, you know, you're Don the GOAT, but if we actually see what you're in action, I don't know what the next term is above GOAT, but it could be that.
Well, you know, look, if Anthony can be in the Keys right now, he can be in DC. So, you know, it's not like you guys can't travel.
That's
you
true.
You can travel.
That's
so
true.
Just have a layover and come visit on a Wednesday morning would probably be the best day of all days to be on
Wednesday
Capitol
morning,
Hill.
and then we can do a live podcast right on the
we can do it on the steps, or we could do it at the Capitol Hill.
Do it on the
Club, or
front
we can do it
steps or the Capitol Hill. We should just do that.
We're putting in Twitter miles, and Don's putting in like actual like 20,000 step days chasing these people down. The video is very compelling when he goes chasing after
Yeah,
Warren
I think you saw that when I was on with Mackenzie at Advisorship, and yeah, she was chasing after me, and I was with Elizabeth Warren, and somebody said she really motors around. And my response was like, she goes from hearing to hearing to hearing.
Yeah.
And some of the backstory, and this is, you know, maybe stuff you don't really care to hear, but members come in to their hearings, they get in the queue, and then they wait for their turn. And while they're waiting, they're not sitting in the hearing. They're off at another hearing. They're off at a meeting. They're doing other things. And then they scurry back. She's a scurrier, but she's always, look, her politics and mine don't line up generally, but on this issue we do. And she's always happy to talk and share information. And she's pushed more than most, than 90% of the Democrats, for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm happy with what she's done. Could they all do more? They could all do more.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to take a stick to somebody who's doing, you know, 90% of the work.
Good point. Well, listen, sir, we'll let you run. Happy Friday. Keep in touch. And, you know, the big takeaway here is that you still feel very bullish on rescheduling and safe banking happening at some point this year. So if I hear that, all is well. It's just, as usual, got to wait a little bit of time, right?
Have a great weekend, gentlemen.
You as well. Thanks, Don.
Take care.
Great guy. He is the GOAT, isn't he?
Papa Murphy.
Murphy.
I love that guy. I wish I didn't agree with him so much, but God, you know, some of the political takes kind of go over my head sometimes. You know, it's easy to have lots of opinions on it and how it all works, but I try to stay out of that as much as possible and just let it all play out.
Yeah, I hear you. All right, that concludes segment number 2 with Don Murphy, all about cannabis. As usual, like this video, share this video with your network, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to our daily newsletter, Baked In. We came out with our latest equity research report yesterday. Again, these reports are for you, the everyday investor, benefiting you, not the brokerage firms. So if you want to log on, it's accessible exclusively for TDR Baked In newsletter subscribers. Okay, let's go into our final segment. We're going to switch now up to psychedelics and welcome in our psychedelic insider, Mr. Cody Chandra. Good day, sir. How are things? I think you're on mute. 1 second. I'm going to unmute you. You might be on mute on your end.
Producing and hosting today. So
there we go.
There we go.
Yep. We're live.
By the way, before we get into anything more,
right.
To all of our audience, producer Mitch, his 2 baby boys were born last night.
Let's go, Mitch.
I know, right? The one's name is Antonio, and if I bring this up, the other name,
I think the other one's named Shad.
Actually. No, it's not Shad. I don't know where the name Shad came from. I've asked that for my mom and dad for years. I like to think I was going to be called Chad, but my dad was drunk and slurred, so it came up with the name Shad. So
That would be a great story if that was the case.
anyways, William and Antonio, both baby boys, are healthy. So Mitch is at the hospital with mom right now. So if you can, leave a like, leave a comment below, and we will push this out to Mitch. But Cody, good to see you. Lots to talk about in the psychedelic space. We got an NDA submission approval from the FDA pertaining to Lykos Therapeutics. Latest earnings was Cybin, and then we've got Numinous that looks like they're cashed up at least till potential MDMA legalization, which is forecasted around timeline-wise around the second week of August. So we'll start with that with Numinous. What'd you make of that news on the $6 million raise? And do you feel confidently that they're set up to for a runway that takes them into potential legalization?
I think that as a shareholder, I am glad that they only raised $6 million at this valuation. At
Yeah,
these
no
prices.
kidding.
So, I think that was a good move. I'm fairly confident that Peyton could have raised a significant amount of more capital, but
Oh, you do?
I do. You have to remember, I was actually just reading. Let me see. The Financial Times just published a great article a couple days ago. A lot of people don't realize January was the second highest month of funding for psychedelic companies ever. $163 million came in.
163 million?
163 million in 1 month. So
where was that coming from? 100? I have no idea.
Yeah, listen, I think the Financial Times article is great. I don't want to blow any sources up, but
Yeah.
there was an interesting conversation that came up. Singapore's largest wealth fund is now looking into the psychedelic space, which is, I guess, interesting. Listen, a country that executes people for drugs. Investing in psychedelic companies is it's a unique.
We live in interesting times,
situation. Yeah, man. It's and then listen, Saudi Arabia too. They're trying to think.
You're dead. Let's invest.
Mubadala is actually looking into psychedelics too.
Wow.
Anywhere you can turn $1 into 10, the sheiks will be there.
Yeah.
So what do you make of this space? I had an interview earlier this week with Peyton from Numinous. Full disclosure, they are a client of ours, but he was outlining when the FDA approved that NDA submission, it was priority review. And basically when you have quote priority review, that's a very telling sign that this is, I don't want to jump to conclusions, but it's a very good sign that this could be approved. And the timeline based off of that would be around the second week of August. So if that does come to fruition, what do you predict as to how this industry will perform in the back end of the year?
I think that the industry is already starting to, especially, listen, the private companies haven't had the issues and the challenges that the public ones have had, right? You have to think outside of Compass, GH, a lot of these guys didn't have the cash pool. They thought that they were going to be raising money forever. When the market started to tighten up a little bit, interest rates started to rise, and then some of the high risk options they just didn't see capital anymore. It put these guys in a situation where they needed to prioritize either the company or the public company.
Yeah.
And obviously we know how that's worked out, but the private companies in our portfolio, the amount of interest that they've gotten over the last 90 days is nothing short of incredible, because from their standpoint is, listen, let's just hypothetically say Lykos does get approval in August, right?
Yeah.
The amount of money that is going to come in from additional drug developers, why did Otsuka buy Mindset Pharma, right?
Exactly.
Their patent on their general anxiety disorder,
yes,
that runs out the end of this year. What were Mindset's 3 leading candidates? General anxiety disorder. This landscape is going to be gobbled up by pharma once they see that regulatory pathway has now been crossed and there is an approved drug on the market. The two things that scare me most is, listen, this is going to be a huge success story for the industry, but as far as a commercialization strategy standpoint,
I know.
Listen, man, it's going to be tough. Think about this. Spravato is commercialized by one of the largest drug companies in the world. It took them almost 5 years to turn that drug into a blockbuster drug. 2 reasons, right? Same thing that's going to happen with MDMA. the critical infrastructure where it's delivered in. This isn't like other medicines where you're going to Walgreens or filling a prescription and that shit's going to live on your counter. It's not it. You need to go into a clinic and the training. Like, where
so
are
you think
all
this is
these?
you think this is 3 to 5 years in the making then, with a commercialization at least, I would say, and I think that's accurate.
Listen, I had an interesting conversation. We hosted an investor event last night for the REIT, and one of the smarter guys in the room who I told him I was going to name drop him today, asked not to. Who's going to be the largest advantage that's going to come out of this is going to be Compass.
Why is that?
Because think about this. The training is going to take place over the next 3 to 5 years to train all of these therapists to administer psychedelic assisted therapy, right?
You're going with this now. Yeah.
The clinics are going to be built out over the next 3 to 5 years. When does Compass get approval? The next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
So while MAPS is going to lose years off of their ability to successfully commercialize this, Compass is going to walk in fully built out infrastructure, patient populations that have been interested but haven't been able to get into a facility. And now you have all of the trained therapists in order to actually go through and sit with these patients.
Yep.
So, it's almost like the explorers versus the settlers, right? Like, do you want to be the guys fighting the wolves and the bears, or do you want to be the guy that's building the town after everything's been cleared out?
That's a good point.
It's what this is going to end up being, man. I'm very, very curious to see how a company like Lycos, I mean, think about the budget that Spravato had on the marketing side. Does a company like Lycos have that same budget to market a drug? I'm not sure.
Yeah. We look at Lycos. They raised $100 million, oversubscribed Series A financing round. There's a lot more money that they're probably going to need to raise, but if there is legalization, you talked about a lot of money that starts coming in. What was was it a tie or Compass, the largest IPO?
Compass.
It was. What did they end up raising? Do you remember off the top of your head?
I think 560 million.
Like, do you think Lycos would be, to get an actually FDA approved drug? Like, do you see the point where they get interest levels to eclipse some of the dollars that were achieved before in the past?
So funny, that gentleman that I was talking to was one of the very early investors into Compass, and he laid out that roadmap specifically where you have to understand Compass is going to have MDMA as prior art. They don't have the same patent window. Like, MDMA has decades of published research on it. They're going to get the specific indication. They have a 6-year patent window. It takes 3 to 5 years to build out the clinics and do all the training. I mean, what are you really successfully commercializing an asset around for a couple of years? So I think
does that play a major impact when raising money?
100%, man. Listen, if guys like that are talking about that already, that's well-established common knowledge that they're obviously all sharing. And an interesting, I don't know if you remember our conversation out in Denver at Psychedelic Science, that was already trickling around.
It was,
through some of the major investors over there. So I don't know. It's, it's going to be very interesting to see, because obviously the decades of work that they've done building the brand around MAPS, I almost think that rebranding, I know, listen, there were some issues with, potential liability and bad press for some of the things that happened during the clinical trials. But I don't know if changing the name of the company, in hindsight, MAPS is recognized everywhere.
Yeah, it is.
I'm going to a MAPS Israel event next week.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's a global brand now.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. It's going to be very, very interesting to see what, the next couple months looks like for them. I am watching very, very, very closely, because this is going to have giant ramifications for everybody else from how they're going to look at the commercialization strategy. Rick, I think last year was talking 16,000 clinics need to be built to treat 1.1 million people with MDMA. There's 9 million people just in the United States suffering from PTSD. Do the math on the amount of infrastructure that needs to be renovated or built.
To me, I think 3 to 5 years seems aggressive.
It's 100%. 100%. Do you
Yeah.
think, you had Dan Carcillo on, when he was running the Wisana clinics, Dude, it was $500,000 in a year to build one ketamine clinic that somebody needs to be in the clinic for 2 hours. Imagine building a facility that someone needs to be in the room for 6 to 8 hours.
Do you think this ever goes at home and virtual if they can't meet up with the infrastructure in time? No.
Nope. No way. Just the risk mitigation strategy, the REMs associated.
I know.
I don't know how you get around that.
Me either. And yet there's business models that are trying to like build off of that, but that's a tough sell.
And listen, I think that's why you've seen a lot of these companies not be able to raise capital or get adopt. I mean, listen, the black market of psychedelics is alive and well. We all know that. They can't sell these products to existing black market consumers right now. Like, why would that, and think about the population that we're talking about, right? Like, if you're diagnosed with PTSD, there's a pretty good chance you're probably, I mean, outside of maybe some police officers that have experienced traumatic events or, survivors of domestic violence, sexual abuse, things like that. These are all going to be people that are a little bit farther along in age. And then if you look at the military population, it's covered by VA insurance. So why would they not go and use their insurance to go into a clinic to be supervised in a hospital?
Yeah. It's a good point. Interesting stuff to say the least, as we, we're starting to see movement now. As you said, you're getting a lot of private companies in the last 90 days that have got a lot of interest. But one thing's for sure, it's good to finally see some momentum building in the space again, because it's been really quiet. I don't want to say quiet, but it's been hit hard.
I am of the opposite mind of that. I think that the last 2 years has been the best thing that could have possibly happened.
Why is that?
Listen. Obviously, everybody knows I run a psychedelic VC fund.
Yep.
For the last 2 years, it is difficult for me to get behind a lot of these companies because we've gotten burned on so many deals. I mean, due diligence can only take you so far. At the end of the day, it's up to the management teams to execute. There were too many options for people to put money into.
That's a good point.
That was the thing. You need, for an industry to actually grow and mature, we've talked about this for 3 years together. We needed consolidation. They need to be run by the best teams in order to actually get these drugs through the FDA and bring that momentum back. I think that's what Lycos is going to be, is that catalyst where you see, listen, if the proper step, they have Big Pharma running the company now. Think about that.
Yeah, they do.
That was the boogeyman a couple of years ago. Everybody's like, oh my God, we can't take this and we can't turn this into medicines and have white coats running the programs. But listen, what's going to happen when MDMA is approved? It's going to be rescheduled and be Schedule 3.
Yeah.
So like what a lot of the roots versus suits argument is, what's good for the suits is good for the roots.
Yeah.
Like that's what I think gets lost so much. And I see this constant infighting and this bickering. Dude, I had somebody on an Instagram post that we did a couple weeks ago, talking about the clinic side of the business that literally blew up our comments. But if they would have just listened to the whole podcast instead of that 60-second clips, 3 minutes before we were just talking about everybody having access to natural medicine, and not being criminalized for that. So like the infighting is just madness to me. I just
welcome to media 2024.
Fucking wild, dude.
People are gonna take what they want at any given time. It's just basically there's a lot of hate speech online for sure, but I think you're bang on. There were as many as 500 companies that wanted to go public 2-3 years ago in this space. When I look at some of the companies I interviewed in the past, I'm like,
you're nuts, dude.
What the fuck was that?
Nuts.
Yeah, you really do. But you just said there's going to be a lot of downsizing with overall companies. But again, we'll reiterate,
the downsizing of the number of companies though is only going to increase the amount of money that's going to the real that's what a lot of people don't understand.
The opportunity of those companies left behind is still massive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and listen, we all seen this with cannabis, right? I've been investing in cannabis since 2015. Dude, does everybody remember all the bullshit that was out there?
Yeah.
8 years ago, 9 years.
Dude, Emily Paxia last week, some of the great early Canadian days.
These are business cycles of expansion and contraction with the trend line going up. So if you just see the trend line going up of use, and then you see expansion, contraction. I think Cody's a wealth of knowledge in this space. I love having him on the show to talk about this stuff. And he brought up several times my favorite word to say with a New Hampshire accent, which is infrastructure.
It's
all about
infrastructure. All comes down to that.
And so you can get drug approvals, and this is a golden age. I mean, my dad back in the 60s and 70s was talking all about this stuff, and people were using all these substances recreationally and opening their minds. And it's just so good to see. It's been a long time coming, right? And the cycle of expansion is happening again. We're going to see a little, we're seeing a little contraction like you're talking about, but then in terms of the number of companies and that sort of thing, but the money coming in, the fact that a lot of these stocks are trading on the NASDAQ, so institutional investors can get involved. And plus we're all long plant medicine here. I mean, if it's truly going to help people, I think it's just a matter of time before sort of pharma repositions themselves to take advantage of the next expansion wave.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Okay, this has been great. I think every Friday we should have you on just for our psychedelic insiders. Things start to heat up a little bit more, but
sure.
Good conversations that we've had with Doug Drysdale as well. Their latest earnings. I know he's looking at their cash burn as well, but what that looks like for that company long term. They've got a lot of great IP with that acquisition with small pharma, but I think in this day,
go ahead. Go back to our interviews 3 years ago. You asked for my dark horse, and I told you small farm. Do you remember small farm was priced at 14 cents? Like, we talk about good management teams, right? Think about this. Small pharma was started by a patent attorney. Like, you want to talk about one guy that was like literally looking ahead of what this industry was going to be.
Is that Peter Rands?
Peter Rands. Yep.
He was a patent attorney. You're right.
Yeah. Like, that's what needs. And listen, again, we're going to see this with MDMA. We'll see this with psilocybin. Hopefully we see this with DMT. Like, let the pharma spend the hundreds of millions of dollars lobbying Washington like they do best, and let these things get rescheduled. So that way everybody has access. You want to go to a clinic and go sit with a doctor, which 90% of people are going to do, or you want to sit at home or in your backyard or with your friends or at a concert or a festival. This all works together. I mean, it's like the cannabis are. I mean, how much have we seen the cannabis infighting too?
I know.
It's wild, man.
One thing Pate did say that if we get, let's say, approval August 11th and around that time, there's then a 45-day review for the DEA to reschedule. Is the 45-day accurate, or is it 90?
It's 45, I think.
It's 45. You imagine if we get rescheduling both in MDMA, cannabis, and safe banking happening by the time we roll into next fall's election. It'd be good times, to say the least.
Listen, man, this is what we've all been working for.
I know.
This is it.
Tell Mr. Carcillo we say hi. Good to see him. That was a great that HBO documentary. Good for him. That was an amazing,
awesome, right?
Piece. That was amazing. But man,
I'll get him lined up for you maybe next week.
Yeah, that was quite an experience, to say the least. But good to see. Obviously, his life is just incredible now. It's gotten so much better, and a lot of people taking notice. And more importantly, what I really like about Dan is that he's trying to share his journey and get people to relate and understand what he went through, and in a lot of ways help others. So kudos to him and you guys for checking out your podcast as well. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your Friday. Thanks for checking in, and we'll catch back up with you next week.
See you, boys. Have a great weekend.
Thanks,
awesome,
Cody.
Thank you.
All right.
Wow.
Do we want to do mic drop today? What are we at? 48.
I can make it real quick.
I'm just trying to figure out, man, I wish Mitch was here, because I'm trying to figure out how to play this back end music.
Don't even worry. I think everyone hears the dub reggae in their head always.
Okay. All right. I'm going to see if I can find something here.
So today I'm going to mix things up a little bit. I know I've been doing fun and
I found it.
All right. I mean, here we go.
Woo! Shad, the host and producer. Welcome. It's Fridays. Now for the greatest part of the week. Fridays. Mic drop. Good luck. Over to you.
Time to drop some science today. No more fun, FUD, and front page. It's science dropping time.
Okay, I turned down the music a little bit for you.
So
Go ahead, brother.
First, a shout out to Papacito, my wife's grandpa. I'm wearing his shirt today. He's an inspiration to me. I'm at his house. down in Florida. He grew up in the El Yunque, the rainforest in Puerto Rico with the parrots.
Did he?
He did.
Nice.
Still has a love of birds. And he was in Korea. He worked on jets with his hands. Came to the U.S., raised a big, beautiful family, and is like the most Zen patriarch I have ever encountered. He's a major inspiration, and he just turned 90. So big shout out to Papacito. He's also a hell of a gardener. He had a multi-acre farm with mangoes, avocados, herbs, flowers, veggies. The man is he's a legend to me. So I just wanted to honor him today.
Nice.
And I'm gonna put on his hat. I got his garden hat on. I got his shirt on.
Look
and
at that.
He's still smiling. I'll play him videos of all sorts of things. He didn't know what to make of this podcast, but you'll love this part. So, so drop some science. Why are the Blue Ridge Mountains blue? This does tie into cannabis in an unexpected way, so stay with me.
All right.
I've lived in the Blue Ridge Mountains and they have this blue hazy tint, and everyone kind of wonders why. Yeah, there we go. Just keep that up. Forget my goofy face. So you can see it's pretty green in the foreground, but very blue in the back. And the reason for that is actually pretty interesting. There's a lot of oak trees in Western Carolina in the mountains there.
Okay.
So the oak trees that get really stressed out in summertime give off isoprene, which is actually a building block of all terpenes. And as we know from studying cannabis, terpenes are everywhere. They're in the pine forests, they're in the flowers, they're everywhere. There's 10,000 plus of them. And the oak trees give off isoprene, which then allows them to sort of coat their own leaves, protect them from the sun, help reflect the sun, and then also seed the clouds so that it would produce rainfall. So the trees are able to do that. I just thought that was beautiful. Why is it blue? Because when the isoprene, a volatile organic compound, floats into the atmosphere, this is Dr. Guap dropping scientist, the sun hits it, refracts the light, giving it that blue haze. So it's only in Western Carolina and some parts of Virginia where you see that blue. The only other place you see the blue is because of some forest in Australia with eucalyptus leaves.
Well, that's interesting news.
It's isoprene, which is a building block of all terpenes.
Did you hit the bong a little bit when you came up with this story?
No, I lived out there and it was blue. I mean, bong rips back then were a regular occurrence, but it's got that blue, and I always wondered why. And some of the explanations online were not satisfactory, so I really dug into it there.
Well, I like it. Is that it for today, or we have more?
No, let's leave it at that. I mean, I just say I wanted to lead everyone through a breathing exercise. It's called box breathing.
Yeah.
Breathe in for 4. Biggest breath you've had all day, okay?
Yes, good point.
Hold it for 4. Release for 4.
Which we need in this industry.
Leave it out for 4. Repeat. Box in, out, repeat. Anytime there's let's say stock drops or news comes out or something stressful happens in your life or there's so many reasons, or even something good that happens, right? And you're too excited. Let's say you do hit the bong a little too hard or something like that. The 4-4-4 box breathing, in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, and leave it out for 4. That's something they teach in special forces. That's something they teach in yoga. I think it would benefit the whole space to just, when they're feeling worked up and the heart rate goes up, just start breathing.
Agreed.
Just like Papacito did all these years.
Agreed. Well, for direction and guidance, if you can understand the roadmap that gets rid of a lot of anxiety in addition to your breathing, next week, as usual, Monday, MSO Mondays with Dan Aarons will be back on. Dan, the chart man, is away this week traveling, but he'll come back on. We haven't decided whether it's going to be next Wednesday or Friday, but we'll bring him back on and look at the latest charts, what's moving, and what you can anticipate for the remainder of the week. As well, we may have a big other guest on. We haven't confirmed yet, but we're working on some big name thought leaders next week in addition to both Dans. So make sure, as usual, you like this video, subscribe to our channel. We would not be here without you. We very much appreciate it. And in the meantime, you, along with our all audience out there, have a great weekend, and we'll catch back up with you on Monday.
Namaste, everybody. Happy birthday to Papa and Mitch's twins. On Mother Earth.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more about the emerging industries that we cover, then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, the questions you want asked, and the information that you want to learn. We want to hear from you. As usual, click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information. Share this video with your network, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without you. Thanks for watching, everyone.